This video is continuing to look at Journey's End, the play by R.C. Sheriff, and we're picking up Act 3 in Scene 2. This is the second of these videos. Scene 1 is done in an earlier video. So if you get your copy of the text, you can follow along with this, and I'd advise you to be making annotations as you go along so you're adding to your notes. Of course, if you think of anything as we're going through, please do add it to your notes. I'm not saying that everything that I say is the absolute final, all you can say on it. So what we're going to do is start looking at Scene 2. And you can see we've got another block of stage directions, and these are always worth looking at very carefully because it's the director's, or it's Sheriff's instructions to the director, it's the director's instructions in terms of how Sheriff envisaged the scene. So you get a lot of your dramatic effect information from looking at stage directions. Now straight away we can see that it's the same day, and this is the day that Osborne has been killed. This is the day the raid has taken place. And if we think back to this kind of previous scene, we've left the action with Raleigh sitting on Osborne's bed, which Stanhope kind of takes as a mark of disrespect or a mark of Raleigh not understanding what's going on, not behaving respectfully, and the guns continuing. So immediately, straight away, we get this contrast. It's late evening on the same day, and yet we have the dugout being lit quite festively. Festive has connotations of celebration. So straight away there is an incongruity. So if something is incongruous, it helps if I spelt it right, incongruous, or an incongruity, it means there is a kind of mismatch. Something being incongruous means it doesn't fit. An incongruity is a mismatch. There's that idea that it doesn't add up. Why are all of a sudden the soldiers celebrating as opposed to grieving? There's an unusual number of candles. It's lit. There is champagne with all of the connotations that champagne has on the table, and they've had a good dinner. So straight away there is a question mark in terms of what has changed, what's altered. We have the idea of light. Light previously has meant kind of hope, and when we've had the light fading, that's been a pathetic fallacy and symbolised lack of hope. So lot of contrast at the start of this scene. We have Stanhope with his cigar lounging. Okay, compare or contrast his lounging with his restlessness in the previous scene. Lounging is when you're kind of lying around lazily, enjoying yourself. His hair is ruffled. There's a bright red flush on his cheeks. So straight away we kind of think he's been drinking. He's just made a remark which has sent Hibbert and Trotter into uproarious laughter. So we have this scene starting off in the middle of the action. Okay, and there is a term for that. It's in medias res. Okay, so you can say, okay, the scene opens in medias res, and that means that it opens kind of halfway through a conversation or so. We are coming to something freshly, but it's been going on a while, right? So we're in the middle of it. So he's just made a remark which has sent Hibbert and Trotter into uproarious laughter. So again, that kind of incongruity. He listens with a smile. Trotter's sitting on the box, leaning against the table. Cigar is embedded in his podgy fingers. Think about what that says about Trotter. Faces are shiny scarlet, deep red patches. His tunic's undone, and he puts his hand every now and then over his distended, so his sticking out, his bloated stomach. Hibbert sits on the bed, his thin white fingers nervously twitching the ash from his cigar. He's pale, shiny with sweat from the heat of the candles, high-pitched, excited in his laughter, and we have Trotter speaking in a husky voice as the laughter dies away. So straight away we've got a couple of things that we can pick up from these stage directions. We have, in terms of warfare, the idea that life has to be celebrated. You know, the men are celebrating almost the fact that they are still alive. They have survived another day. They are taking advantage of every single little bit of happiness or enjoyment they can access, rather than giving into depression and grief, because that way kind of really severe mental health problems lie. You know, that way madness lies. And you've got that idea of they're pretending, it's a facade, okay? And later on in this scene, it's going to be the case that Raleigh doesn't realise it's a facade, doesn't realise that it's a defence mechanism, a coping strategy, that they're trying to ignore the brutality of war. A facade is a kind of false front. Okay, it comes from when streets used to look a bit tatty. If there was a royal visit or anything special happening, they would erect kind of false wooden fronts over the dirty looking buildings, so it would look like it was a nice street. So we use it metaphorically to mean it's a false front. You also get some information about the different characters there. I would look at, you know, Stanhope being kind of more controlled, more collected. His drinking is obviously in evidence. He is entertaining his men. He is being the kind of consummate officer. You know, he's got them all around and is kind of taking on that role that he used to play at public school again, as being a leader there. We have Trotter's repulsiveness or repugnance kind of put in, you know, the idea that he has podgy fingers. Podgy are kind of fat and squishy. His cigar is embedded, it's kind of almost lost within his fat hand. His face is shiny, bright red. He's blotchy. He's overeaten, showing, you know, by his stomach sticking out. He's had to loosen his clothes. So he's showing this kind of greed and lack of reserve and the kind of comedy elements. You know, he's called Trotter, and a pig's feet are called trotters. So he's got all of that kind of, you know, comic element about him. Whereas Hibbert, true to form, is kind of nervous, twitching, skinny, pale, slightly too kind of excited about everything. And in a way, these descriptions kind of detract, they take away from the festivities, because this is not the dignified dinner party over which Stanhope would normally be presiding, that he'd normally be in charge of at home in England. This is a kind of parody of a dinner party. It's a mockery of one. It's a joke one. So it's not at all kind of elegant or dignified. And we have a kind of Trotter. What did she say to that? She said, "Not in these trousers, in French." So, you know, we're meant to understand that Stanhope is being very witty, very funny. You know, he's regaling the men with his funny stories. Trotter can hardly control himself. Again, you get that kind of sense that he's a little bit uncouth, a little bit kind of unrefined, undignified. And, you know, there's a little bit of sexual innuendo going on. Innuendo is when you are implying kind of ruder meanings there. And, you know, clearly Stanhope is staying the right side of decorum. Okay, decorum is the correct way to behave. He's demonstrating decorum. And, you know, the idea that he's, "Oh, Skipper, you are a scream." You know, Trotter is enjoying his company. He's very, very funny. He's being witty and entertaining. Whereas the tone changes a little bit with Hibbert's interruption here. I never forget picking up a couple of tarts one night and taking them out to dinner. So all of a sudden, the way we're talking about women has changed. Okay, tarts is kind of objectifying them. Okay, it's demeaning. It's kind of dehumanizing. And Hibbert, his kind of enjoyment, his boasting, his ideas come from this kind of belittling treatment of women. Okay, this is not a good look for Hibbert. You know, these are officers and apparently gentlemen, whereas he's treating people badly. So turning, and he's off again. Okay, implies that Hibbert has done this a lot. Okay, Hibbert, this is his routine way of thinking about women, of boasting about his sexual conquests, about his adventures with women. So we say, we drank enough bubbly to sink a battleship, to float a battleship. So you've got the idea of, you know, his Stanhope's metaphor is much better, right? And he's not accepting it. Okay, he's kind of correcting him. He's kind of undermining him, saying he's not going to sit and listen to this anecdote uncritically. So bubbly is champagne. So we drank enough champagne to kind of sink a battleship, to float a battleship. And you can see again with this anecdote, took him for a joyride, damned if I didn't lose the way, you know, tarts began cursing me like hell. I said if they didn't damn well shut up, I'd chuck them both out in the road and leave them. Okay, this is not a chivalrous attitude. Chivalry is the idea of kind of knights and saving damsels in distress and holding doors open for women and basically behaving like a gentleman. He is showing a kind of repeatedly misogynistic attitude. Okay, it's so you've got misogynistic. Misogyny is the dislike of women, the hatred of women. Okay, so he is sexist. And again, Stanhope's ironic comment, that's the idea, treat him rough, is again undermining what Hibbert's saying. You know, oh yes, that's the way to treat women. Yeah, you've got to do that to them. So again, it's highlighting the comparison. And the idea that Hibbert doesn't see it. Okay, Stanhope is mocking him, and Hibbert is too drunk or too excited or too caught up with his own importance that he doesn't realise. And he's boasting, he's bragging, I didn't have any more trouble from them. Okay, again, it's all of this unpleasant, repulsive attitude. The idea that, well, he's boasting about drinking, he's boasting about speeding, about driving dangerously, about being kind of potentially cruel to women. And then he slugs it down with another bottle of champagne or another gulp of champagne. So you're the sort of man who makes girls hard to please. Again, that's another ironic comment from Stanhope. He's saying, oh yes, you know, being out with you would make the ladies complain. Girls would be hard to please with, you know, they'd always complain about that sort of treatment. And Trotter comes in with his talking about Shanks's pony, Shanks's mare, the idea of, you know, Trotter hasn't got a fast car, hasn't been able to kind of ride round impressing women. You know, he's much more down to earth. He's much more kind of everyday than Hibbert is. So this idea of you satisfied with legs, yes, I am. They're much cheaper. And Shanks's mare or Shanks's pony is a very old fashioned way of saying walking. So you know, this is implying that, you know, they've got this little thing. Trotter is a figure of some fun, some joking, and is very kind of practical, very back to basics. And Hibbert is just getting more and more kind of, I suppose, excited, giddy, drunk, but more and more out of control. And he's clearly here laughing at Trotter, not laughing with Trotter, which is a kind of difference. And Trotter realises, and a baleful eye is kind of a sad eye, you know, kind of, oh, okay, we know what's going on here. So you've had too much champagne, you have. So, you know, Trotter realises that the atmosphere is beginning to turn, okay? And it makes us realise that maybe Hibbert isn't going to respect some of the boundaries that are coming up. It's important that actually it's Hibbert and only Hibbert that's kind of expressing these views about women because of the production of the postcards, because Hibbert thinks that this is going to be his moment to share his risque. So risque is a little bit rude, a little bit saucy, a little bit kind of provocative, his sexy postcards with his I was going to say colleagues. It's not colleagues, is it? It's comrades. And this is his kind of special moment because he hands them one by one to Stanhope. Okay, he's after Stanhope's approval. And instead, you know, he's not necessarily going to get it. He wants Stanhope's kind of praise for, oh my goodness, look at these postcards. These are clearly special to. And Stanhope's question, where do you get these from, could be played kind of critically rather than excitedly. It's not, wow, where did you get these from? It's, where did you get these from? Okay, so it senses things aren't going well. And Hibbert in Bethune, she's all right, isn't she? Stanhope, too fat. Okay. It's interesting, they are starting to show divisions between the men and the men's attitudes. It could be that Stanhope is never going to give Hibbert the satisfaction of finding the postcards entertaining or arousing or to be something that he might want. Hibbert is desperate for Stanhope's approval. Stanhope is deliberately withholding it. Okay, so Hibbert is asking repeatedly, you know, she's all right, and Shannon's saying no. Okay, and again, Trotter also follows Stanhope, doesn't follow Hibbert. So we're getting this factionalization. If you are in factions, there are two groups. Okay, so the conversation's becoming factionalized. It's not fraction, it's faction. Just I know some people kind of try and put an R in it. And whatever card kind of Hibbert gives Stanhope, he's going to find something wrong with the woman on it and going to get Trotter to agree with him. Again, we've got more of this depersonalized idea, you know, there's a nice pair of legs for you, rather than that's the one, not she's the one I like best. Okay, Hibbert is thinking about sex, yeah, and you know, is looking at constantly kind of trying to find approval from Stanhope. Did you see him, Skipper? Stanhope is tired of it all. That stage direction wearily. Okay, and then he brightens up with the idea of more drinking and Mason coming in and requests whiskey. So the idea that actually Trotter is drinking tea, whereas Stanhope's on whiskey, it shows that actually maybe this whole day, the experience and the cumulative experience has affected him way more than he's willing to let on. He still needs to drink. He still needs to take the edge off his grief from today. You know, whiskey on top of champagne, why not? It's all right. Okay, and Stanhope says, you know, he feels, he knows, looks like he's had enough. He feels blown up with a bicycle pump, but Stanhope needs the alcohol. Okay, just trying to change the page. There we go. So, there's a little bit of joking round with Mason to say that actually this is, you know, the effect of Mason's cooking. And then we just note that actually Stanhope is shocked at how little whiskey is left and hasn't made the connection in terms of where it's going. Okay, so the last bottle, we bought 6. So this is kind of thing to, you know, he is actually working his way through the whiskey. right? Again, we get this reference to sunrise in terms of, a new day, etc. Trotter asks for his cup of tea, so there's that contrast. Although he'll have a spoonful of whiskey just to calm himself down. Okay, so palpitations is when your heart is beating too quickly. So even Trotter is kind of acknowledging that there's this idea that we use alcohol to take the edge off feelings, off concerns, off worries. So we move then to noticing that Raleigh isn't there. And Stanhope says straight away, I told him to come down. So we've got that repetition of I told him, okay? And, Stanhope has been giving not quite orders, but certainly strong directives. But, Raleigh still isn't there. Trotter doesn't understand. I wonder why he didn't come. And Hibbert is quick to be critical. Okay, and he's quick to criticise, to give a reason that he thinks will estrange Raleigh from, certainly from Stanhope and maybe from Trotter. If you estrange somebody from something, or you estrange yourself from something, you are putting that division between you. So Hibbert is kind of keen to form a divide, or to create a divide, because he wants to ingratiate himself with Stanhope. If you ingratiate yourself with somebody, you're basically sucking up to them. You're trying to get on the right side of them. And it works because Stanhope realises, he said that this idea that, he doesn't want to be up here with us, he wants to be there with the men. Stanhope stands for rank and solidarity and doing things properly, and Raleigh as an officer not being with the other officers is wrong at this point, and they kind of don't quite, they're all processing what's gone on in different ways, and Stanhope believes that, them being together is the best way of getting through it. So Hibbert kind of emphasises, yes, I told him about the chicken and champagne and cigars, and he stared at me and said, you're not having that, are you? Just as if he thought we were going to chuck it away. So this is an idea of, again, Raleigh being idealistic. He has started to realise that the men's cooperation, the men's good spirits, the kind of, I suppose, approach to it is the one that the Colonel was taking in the previous scene. It doesn't quite matter who died or what the cost was. Well done, this is a feather in our caps, have some champagne, be prepared to do it again. And Raleigh is seeing these goods almost as blood money, almost as kind of something that they shouldn't have taken, should not be enjoying, because it's like blood money. It's a kind of payment that isn't acceptable for what's happened. And Trotter kind of is slightly more insightful. He says, I reckon the raid shook him up more than we thought. I like that youngster. He's got pluck. Okay, so he's got courage, he's got nerve, he's got enthusiasm, is all encapsulated in pluck. Strong lad too. The way he came back through the smoke after that raid, carrying that Bosch, carrying that German under his arm like a baby. So Stanhope saying, actually, he's realised that Raleigh has got more about him when it counted, but recognising that actually the effect of today on Raleigh has been significant and maybe they've underestimated it. Whereas Hibbert kind of again goes in slightly more critically. Did you see him afterwards? He came into the dugout, never said a word. His youth is emphasised by Trotter. He's only a lad. If you think about the kind of difference, I guess, Hibbert is going to react against that idea of pluck and courage and everything that Raleigh represents, because it's everything that Hibbert is not. You would not catch Raleigh feigning neuralgia to get out of a raid. Raleigh went and did it. So that's the kind of thing that's important there. And you get the idea that Stanhope is kind of fixed on that idea. He wants to verify his facts. He actually told you he preferred being up with the men better than down here. That's what he said. Trotter's still looking at his courage. Well, I hope he gets the MC. He's strong and plucky. And Stanhope then finally breaks. You know, the whole point of the champagne and the candles and the whiskey and the jokes and the celebrations are to act as a distraction, or to take their mind off it. And all of a sudden the men are back on, kind of, you know. So he says, oh, for God's sake, forget that bloody raid. Think I want to talk about it? No, but after all, well, shut up. All right. We were having a jolly decent evening till you started blabbing about the war. Okay, so Stanhope is using all sorts of things as denial, rather than just using alcohol. Stanhope is trying to kind of retreat and trying to almost kind of stop thinking about the reality of life just for a little while. We'll leave it there for now and pick up in the next video.